This episode is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's best unlimited network.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I don't know when you're watching this, but it's morning for us, kind of. It's 11 a.m. here in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful day. Why? Joe Starr is here.
Yep.
Mr. Spencer GIlbert.
Yeah, good morning.
Dan Murrell.
Beautiful day. I'm already on my second video.
Look at that. We already reviewed Star Wars today.
We did. We reviewed Star Wars already.
And after that, I was like, well, I work.
Snoke kills Dumbledore.
Yes. Spoilers! That makes me want to go down a rabbit hole about spoilers, but I actually will do that later this week. We'll tie it into something that actually happened this past week in a TV show. Not talking about it right now. Right now, what we're going to talk about
I like
is
it when you start the show with riddles.
I thought Lon was the game master.
What has 4 legs in the morning, 3 legs at night?
What?
We'll solve this later.
Fox Disney deal is imminent. Looks like it's going to be signed by Thursday. And we want to dive into some of the implications that people are maybe or are not thinking about. But first, Dan, what do you think about this in total?
Yeah, I mean, we're about to dive into some of the genre implications of this because people in these different genres are starting to comment because this is imminent. But I want to say, like, number one, we will be you should check out a video that came out this weekend where we covered this. You sat down with the journalist and Billy as well to kind of cover this further. We'll be discussing it, I think, again on Thursday when it's officially official, when it's supposedly going to be announced. But also, like, there are so many more things tied into this deal than comic book characters and franchises and genres. There are legitimate, and I'm speaking personally, there are legitimate questions about competition, about the creative environment. Is it going to be more restrictive? Is it not going to be more restrictive? Disney, when they own Miramax, they made movies like Pulp Fiction. So there's the side of the argument that says that they're going to continue to use the Fox assets to do their own thing. The other part of me says, why are you expecting a corporation to not be a corporation? And there's certain things about jobs, redundant positions. There are a lot of concerns that are pressing, and I think we would all agree are a little more important than just the genre concerns. Having said that, that's a big part of this deal, and to a lot of our audience, it is a huge driving interest in this deal. But I do think there's also some very big real-world issues tied up in this that we will address moving forward. So.
Do you guys are you pro or do you have concerns around this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as a moron, I hate having choices. So I'm just looking forward to when every movie is called a Disney and all shops are called Amazons and all foods are McDonald's.
Very well.
Yeah, Demolition Man future.
Exactly.
I'm against this. I'm nervous about it. I know a lot of our audience gets frustrated when we talk about this and don't just talk about Wolverine being in an Avengers movie, which I agree is cool, and I like the new Avengers comics when he is an Avenger. And also I've noticed we've had an uptick in audience that say, why do you keep harping on this monopoly? Like, there's lots of stuff. There's the Sinclair deal that's terrible, and I agree that it is. But us specifically, this is our wheelhouse. This is what we talk about. And if
my video on the British East India Company is on a different channel.
that's on Spencer Economy Things. By the way, what was your what was your face reaction on? Oh, okay.
I did not expect that bold of a stance on the British.
Well, I mean,
I thought it was going to be more
controversial.
I do love opium.
Very controversial.
Don't we
of
all?
course, these are all sort of wrapped up into one idea. If you don't think that Fox Disney is also not directly nefariously linked necessarily, but at least thematically linked to a lot of similar deals that are going on across media, or if you only think that this is going to affect jobs in LA, you're wrong. This is going to affect your local movie theaters. This is going to affect your Hulu choices, your Netflix, your everything that you want to watch or see. this is going to have major implications in all of that. And if us talking about the Fox Disney deal can get people interested in things like Sinclair and other deals that are going on, hooray.
Sure, right? I mean, to your point, what we talk about is entertainment. That's our focus. So that's why we are talking about this deal, because it will absolutely have implications in terms of entertainment. But you also...
Although I am excited about our Economy Fights theme show about the Panama Canal coming up this Thursday.
This Thursday at 4 p.m. You guys should tune into
Panama
that.
versus Suez. It's canal fights.
It's actually counter-programming to Movie Fights. It'll be here on SJ News, and Movie Fights will be over there. Let's see who wins. Here's the other thing, and I'm actually hesitant to even say this, but I'm going to do it. If you look at some of recently in terms of the LA Times, what the LA Times went through with Disney, they were initially, the LA Times wrote a report about Anaheim, right? And sort of what goes on in Anaheim. And it was so local. It was like just such a local story, but it became a national story because Disney then blocked the LA Times critics from seeing their movies because they were reporting on what was happening in Anaheim. Now, that ended...
Unfairly, they thought.
They felt it was unfair reporting.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you. But the point that I'm trying to make is that went away because all of the critics associations came out and said, well, we're going to boycott Disney movies then in solidarity with the critics from the LA Times. And so fine, everything's fine. Now that's a huge outlet. That's the LA Times.
What are they going to do to ScreenJunkies when they see this video?
I don't know. And I'm not even kidding. I have no idea. But the point...
Well, have you seen Last Jedi yet?
But that's my point.
I see it with the people.
Well, we got to see it yesterday, and we're very grateful for that because we don't feel entitled to anything, and we're grateful for all of the things that we get. However, I will say this. The point is that behavior also in terms of asking for 65% from theater chains, right, is indicative of what you can do when you have a ton of power. And you're talking about exponentially increasing that power and authority and what is going to be done with it. And I'm not saying that this is like evil, nefarious people at all. I'm saying that's just sort of human nature. You hand someone that much power and that little competition, and it's not necessarily going to yield the best results for consumers.
Mm-hmm. And it's a business. I mean, that's the thing is that at the end of the day, that's what every movie studio is. It's a business. Some of them are a little more artistically inclined than others. Some of them aren't. But when you have now 30% of the market share, which if this is announced on Thursday, between Disney and Fox, that's about what they'll have. And Disney already has things in place saying, like, you're going to play if you want our movies, you're going to play them in this kind of theater for this long. And so now add in all of the movies that Disney has under their umbrella. They now have the power to extend that to all of the movies that are now under Fox's umbrella to say, okay, now if you want any Disney movie or any Fox movie, you're going to keep it in this theater. You're going to keep it in this theater for this long, and you're going to give us this much of the profits. Again, this is not putting nefarious things. This is a business. That is detrimental to competition because now you have two studios now that have, if you want to play their movies, which you would, because Deadpool 2 is going to be huge now. I'm not saying the Fox deal is going to be done by then, but that is now fewer theaters for Paramount and Warner Brothers and all these others, because now these theaters are tied up for X amount of weeks or for X amount of money. And it's like, this is what you have to think about looking at these deals. This is it's not necessarily what's going to happen, but these are the implications of things that could happen when one company, and this is, by the way, a deal that's going to have to go through regulatory bodies, that's going to have to go through governmental bodies to make sure that it's not in violation of any kind of antitrust. This is not a done, if they announce it, it's not an absolutely done deal. But these are the real world things. When people say this is boring, this is a business story, it's not really, because it ripples out. And business moves have an effect in the entertainment industry, and that's what we're here to cover. We're here to cover the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and those are only two large, but those are only two aspects of the implications of this deal.
Yeah.
Like, that's all. If you consolidate, you're talking about they would now have 30% of the box office, which can sound like a small number, but when you consider that would be by a large margin the majority share of the box office, you're looking at a world in which it's very difficult to compete with that. And we're wanting to see more interesting movies in a larger scale. Now, it could be that the other studios go, okay, fine, we're just going to make cheaper movies and take different kind of bets. And you guys will do the large franchise movies. I don't know. Nobody really knows just yet. But I certainly have reservations about one entity having so much control.
And it's the end of an historic era in Hollywood.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is the end of this studio system.
Fox was one of the original studios. I mean, this is really kind of the, if you're going to be a sentimentalist about Hollywood, which I am, this is the end of the Hollywood studio system as we know it. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore, which is sad when you think about it. I mean, the fact that it's a new era where you don't have some of these landmark, and I mean, Paramount is in trouble. Warner Brothers is doing actually really past $2 billion, so they're doing fine. But I mean,
not worried about Warner Brothers.
if this is
there's
possible,
another
what else
merger
is
there.
possible? Now, if you have now maybe two more studios say, well, now we have to compete with them, so now maybe we have to. It can be a slippery slope, and there's not a lot of winners potentially.
I mean, the thing that fans are looking forward to, as we know, is the potential uniting of the Avengers, right? And the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the properties that Fox owns in the X-Men. And although we're going to get into this, not necessarily the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
So that's what fans are really excited about. And I totally, Joe, I get it too. I really do. People are excited. They've been wanting to see Wolverine fight with the Avengers for a long time.
And as a fan of the comics, there's nothing wrong with being excited about that. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a genuine excitement to see these characters. I mean, yes, there are other concerns, but that's not to invalidate the things that people are excited about. This is one of them. It's why we're going to talk about it.
But you won't see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine either way, because this is what he had to say about it. For many, many years, he has said he would love to make that happen, but this was his most recent quote. It's interesting because for the whole 17 years, I kept thinking that would be so great. Like, I would love to see particularly Iron Man and the Hulk and Wolverine together. And every time I saw an Avengers movie, I could just see Wolverine in the middle of them and punching them all in the head. He said this to Collider. But it was like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. And it was interesting just when I first saw this headline about the merger or about the deal. It was just a possibility of it, and who knows what's going to happen, obviously. But I was like, hang on. But I think, unfortunately, that ship has sailed for me. But for someone else, I would like to see Wolverine in there. So he's just feels like he's done playing this character. So that's not going to happen anyway, which is kind of a bummer. So do you think that people would even be as thrilled to see a brand new Wolverine in this mix?
I mean, Wolverine's going to come back one way or another post-Logan. They're not going to let their most popular X-Men stay dead for long. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that we didn't get a chance for Logan's Wolverine to join the MCU, because I'd really like to see him just disembowel Quicksilver, for example. just curse and drink too much and pass out on his corpse. I think that's the kind of spice that's missing from the MCU that hopefully this merger will bring back.
Well, it could go that way, or I'm going to skip down a bit. And another concern, and this is from James Mangold. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Another concern would be that it would go the opposite way.
Yeah. I know. That's the joke.
I'm here for my hair.
So are we, Roth Cornet.
No, they're going to do, no disrespect, the animated series version where Wolverine only fights robots. Or non-human things.
Or calls people gutter trash, egg-sucking pieces of gutter trash.
I don't know. I mean, are they going to go a totally new direction?
I don't know. With the comics, whenever he's around shinier superheroes, I guess, there's always that sort of interesting question of like, why do we have this guy around? He's a crazy murderer. And well, we need him because he can do this, or he sure is trying his best. And, there's always sort of those interesting questions that revolve around a guy like Wolverine or a guy like Punisher being involved in the mix with sort of the front and center public guys like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. But that would mean that to set him up, Disney would have to lean into, hi, this guy is a crazy murderer that a government pulled apart his brain, and he's basically an animal. So I don't know. I don't know how far they lean into that, or if it's just you see glimpses of him in a Weapon X helmet and some voiceover goes, bad things sure did happen to Logan in them woods. and now he's back. I don't know why.
Wolverine.
All right, I'm in. I'm sold.
Wolverine, the Deliverance. is the side
Wolverines
movie.
of Hazard.
Yeah.
Oh, that Logan boy.
Freeze frame.
There.
Him and Sabretooth.
Fantastic Four. That's another one. So although here's the idea. Everybody thinks that Fox owns the rights to the Fantastic Four. They don't. They are licensing the rights to the Fantastic Four, and there's a difference between the distribution rights and the production rights. So the point, and there's like, you can go read about it because it's a lot of things about who does and who does not own the rights. But the point is this, they actually might not get the Fantastic Four. Disney might not have that back unless they were then going to license those rights. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you care, Dan?
How much do I care? I don't know, 7, I guess. I mean, on a scale from 1 to 10, is this company going to license the rights of the Fantastic Four back to Disney? The answer is 47. This production company would be stupid not to license the rights back to Disney. I mean, I get that that's the story. It's just like, well, you know, technically Fox doesn't own those rights, but Disney's going to have the Fantastic Four. They own the Marvel Universe. The MCU at least, and the Fantastic Four is the keystone first family of the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if the Fantastic Four did not end up there at Disney. In some way.
There is something funny to me though about Constantine Films just being like the old man from Up that refuses to move his house as the condos all build up around him.
Since Joe brought it up, Constantine Films is the production company that does own the rights.
Own the rights. I mean, the Fantastic Four will be back. You can see. I like to think that you can kind of read tea leaves with what they try to do in the comics in terms of building towards the future for the films. And so, you know, one thing in the comics is a lot of the sort of senior level heroes are taking a backseat to younger, newer heroes. And now we see that there's going to be a big kind of end in Infinity War and a lot of new movies, you know, in the MCU moving forward, which I'm assuming will be those younger, shinier characters. And one thing they've done in the comics is the Fantastic Four is gone. They took a huge backseat, and I think that's something that they'll just be waiting, you know, for whatever next big Marvel event there is. You get to the last page, and there's a big Human Torch fire 4 in the sky, and then they announce, "Hey, Fantastic Four is back," whether it's going to be a show or a movie. But yeah, that'll definitely happen. There's some big like buff guy in like a black t-shirt that Disney hires to go to Constantine Films that's like, "Nice small office you got here, Constantine Films. It'd be a shame if something happened to it."
They knock over the one file cabinet.
Every day they just come knock that file cabinet back over, and Bob Constantine's like, back up, puts everything back in the back.
I can't sort one more day.
Yeah.
I've said this before, but there was my old colleague and I had a pitch for how they could keep the rights to Fantastic, because you have to make the movie. Basically, you have to use the characters or you lose the license over a period of a certain time. So it was just called Deadpool 2. Deadpool kills the Fantastic Four and have them kill them in the first 2 minutes, and then
You buy yourself another 10 years.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you buy yourself 10
Which
years,
I'm
and
super
none of the
into.
movie has anything to do with it.
Yeah. And they could do similar stuff in the comics with these in terms of like, okay, we have to have them in 10 movies. Cool. You know what? The Human Torch Thing hung out with the Guardians of the Galaxy for a while after the Fantastic Four broke up. Human Torch hangs out with Spider-Man. Like, it so easily done. Yeah.
Yeah. Peyton Reed, who directed Ant-Man, was somebody that I thought could have made a great Fantastic Four movie.
I believe he pitched a
He did.
60s set.
Yeah.
He wanted to get like George Clooney as Mr. Fantastic, and he pitched like a 60s period set Fantastic Four movie, and then they didn't move on with that. They went with the other version that they did. But I thought that he brought a great energy to Ant-Man.
Me too.
And I would, you know, that's the advantage, I guess, that you get is you have the stable of directors now who would have access to this. But also, it's, well, I don't know. I'll get further into it when we get to what James Mangold said, because there's some questions I have about.
Should we get to what James
Yeah, let's get to what James Mangold said.
What did James Mangold say?
James Mangold, director of Logan, had the following concerns. He's sort of talking about how many films they're actually going to make and the potential downside. And he said if they're actually changing their mandate, if what they're supposed to do alters, and that would be sad to me because it just means less movies. I just hope that we end up with is going to be a positive in terms of the movies that we all do, obviously. But here's the thing. It's assuming that Disney's going to cherry pick or make fewer films. That's not necessarily the case.
It's not, but again, they're going to have the rights to all these characters. If you think that they're going to keep them
they won't be
separated, then I just think that's naive. But then the question becomes, okay, they're not going to pass up putting Deadpool in an MCU movie.
But Deadpool's the easiest one, in a way.
But also, does that mean that they're going to continue making movies like Deadpool or like New Mutants appears like it's going to be, that are so, and Logan, that are so tonally different from what the other thing that they're doing? Like, if they're going to be uniting these characters in these universes, which again I think they would be, there's no way they're not going to. What happens to these outliers? Do they continue to be outliers that just are completely tonally inconsistent with the rest of the movies, or do they go through that same factory and get that same sheen and kind of patina on them, which I don't think they should
Feige
have.
has said, post soft reboot or whatever this is going to be for the MCU, that they will pursue, the films are going to feel very different. And I don't necessarily know what that means exactly, because for instance, like you say with the Fox stuff, is James Franco's Madrox still going to be like a hardline noir movie about a guy with basically multiple personalities that are physical people, or is it gonna now sort of end with like him and a bunch of his friends jumping off a rooftop saying, "Who am I? I'm multiple man." So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Feige's statements about how different everything's gonna look after this sort of is lined up with the knowledge that we're gonna buy all these things and you'll get your one-offs still, or what. I don't know.
Here's the thing. Let me elaborate on something so I don't get yelled at. Deadpool, I'm saying, is very tonally different than the MCU, but Deadpool's also a character that jumps in and out of realities quite easily. So using him that way might be a bridge. And you could work around how crass he is depending on how often he's in the movie. But what's working for Fox is Logan, is Deadpool, in terms of both creatively and financially. Those are working. There are smaller budgets, large rewards. The films are good. If you're Disney, why do you want to break a thing that's working? I don't necessarily know that that's what they would do.
I just don't know how those two things mesh.
They don't
the
live
unstoppable
together.
force and the immovable object. What gives? Does Disney give in and say, okay, we're going to cut out a certain percentage of our market share? Yeah, I'm not so much concerned about Disney not making any R-rated movies. Like I said, they owned Miramax at the time in the mid-'90s when Miramax was making a lot of really good, strong R-rated independent films. I'm more concerned about what are they going to do with the major properties, and is it all going to be now run through the same factory? I hope not. I really do. I think that would be a real shame, because we're just getting to a point where they're brave enough to be different.
Yeah.
And I would hate for us to now go back and be like, okay, no, they all go through the same machine. And the machine, while it works, at least to me now, I start seeing the imprint. I'm starting to see the stamp. I'm starting to see the cogs working, and I'm starting to see the maker's mark on a lot of these movies. That's like, okay, well, 20% of it is going to be this, because that's what every movie that comes out of this machine has. And it's not that they're bad movies. They're not bad movies, but I am starting to get a feeling of, even though they're starting to be wildly divergent in tone, in a weird way, there's also the sameness that's starting to seep into them, even with filmmakers like Taika Waititi and Rian Johnson, people that they're bringing in who bring such a distinct style, and that's what's keeping them fresh. There is a sameness that I'm starting to see with certain aspects of the movies that shows me that it has gone through this filter. And and that's what I worry about, is you can't send every movie through the same filter, because it's just, filter doesn't work for every movie.
Your independent horror movie about a young mutant with a weird magic sword and a girl that turns into a werewolf can't necessarily go through the same filter as Avengers Age of Ultron.
Right.
Yeah. I want somebody to make the Logan trailer that's gone through that filter and send that to me. He would be willing to do that.
He cracks a joke every 5 minutes because you're afraid that you're going to lose the audience.
Yeah. Wait, we're feeling things. No, a joke.
One of my
Somebody trip over a trash can.
One of my favorite YouTube videos, I can't remember the name of the channel that did it, but they did like a G-rated 300 trailer where they just insert all these very family-friendly things and added ADR where all the Spartans are charging with toothbrushes and floss, and they're just yelling, "Brush your teeth!"
I think there's a place for all of it, but I do think that the more standard approach is going to no longer work, and we're already seeing that a little bit financially in terms of diminishing. Not on something like Thor, which I think was doing something different. It's at least a little weird, but it does have the Marvel tone for sure.
Sure.
We'll see where it all goes. Spencer?
What's up?
Yeah. It's Star Wars week. Are you excited?
Hell yeah.
You gonna go see Last Jedi?
I will when I'm allowed to.
Well,
Which is when everyone else is allowed to.
Yeah.
Which
Do you have
is
tickets?
during movie fights live. Yeah, I'm gonna skip
Fighting from the line.
Yeah,
That was my
Head on
favorite
out.
statement. People I was telling these guys for weeks. People were like, "When's movie fights coming back? When's movie fights coming back? When's movie fights coming back? When's movie?" And we're waiting. We're trying to figure it out. And then we're like, "Okay, here's when movie fights is coming back." And then was like, "Not on Star Wars Day." It's like, I'm sorry. That's
always been Thursday.
That's when we
Always
had
been
to bring
Thursday.
it back.
Star Wars came out on movie fights. Day.
Yes, exactly. Star Wars came out on movie fights.
We didn't
Day.
land on Star Killer Base. Star Killer Base landed on
Landed on
us.
us.
I get to see it Saturday with our good friend Ken Knapsack. I can't think of a better person to
Ken,
go.
that will have been his fifth or sixth time seeing
Seventh
it.
time seeing it. Yeah.
I will be seeing. Yeah. So that'll be fun.
He's
I'm
going to
excited.
marathon it all day Friday, and then
Yep.
you'll catch him on the back end on Saturday.
Exactly. Hey, I will take Ken's dirty fists. It's fine.
Actually, if you need a little catch up, we have you covered.
Yeah,
We have
cram
a
it
cram
over
it.
on ScreenJunkies main channel.
Yeah.
20 minutes, 8 movies.
Well spent.
Well
20
spent
minutes, well
20
spent.
minutes. Yeah. You spent that 20 minutes, I assume.
Yes.
Yes, you did. So you're going to go see it on Thursday or this weekend?
Friday.
Friday. All right. Well, we'll hear about what these guys think next Monday. We have a review up on SJ Main right now. But also, Mark Hamill has had some things to say about where he thought things were going and where he wishes things would have gone with Luke. I, for the record, loved where things went with Luke in this film. Dan?
Yes.
Very well. Here's what he said. He said he wished that George Lucas had been more involved in the new trilogy, saying, "What I wish is that Disney had been more accepting of the guidance and advice." He told Metro this in an interview published over the weekend because he had an outline for 7, 8, and 9, and it is vastly different than what they have done. He had originally expressed some reservations when Johnson took over about Luke Skywalker. He said they saw the character very different. And he sort of backpedaled from what he initially said, but he'd initially said essentially like, I fundamentally disagreed with every single choice he made about Luke, but it was my job to do it. And then he kind of backed off and he's like, no, I like it. It's good. And he says, but then again, I don't want to be an old stick in the mud. He said this to Metro again. There were the originals, there were the prequels. That's all George. And now we have the next generation. And as far as I can see, they are more popular than ever, which is certainly true.
It's true.
But that's sort of interesting to have Luke Skywalker himself to have such mixed feelings.
That's got to, well, beyond I don't even know that the mixed feelings directly address his opinion of what Rian Johnson did necessarily more than it's like, you're the dude that played Luke Skywalker. You've had how many years now to just sit and go, where's Luke Skywalker go? What is Luke Skywalker? Who is Luke Skywalker? I'm Luke Skywalker. And then another guy who grew up with your films and your work comes out and goes, oh, I took something totally different away from where Luke Skywalker goes. Like, that's got to be such an interesting dynamic to, like, have to sit down with that guy and be like, okay. I mean, that's got to be the feeling where, I don't know, you thought your kid was going to be, a lawyer. Your kid's going to be a lawyer. Your kid's going to be a lawyer. Your kid's going to be a lawyer. And then, your kid's like, I'm going to be singing opera. Bye. And you're like, what? Okay, that's fine. Whoa. That's just got to be an interesting position to be as the guy who is Luke.
Yeah, I mean, with the extra wealth of having, luckily, being able to see The Last Jedi now, I see where he's coming from. And yeah, JT fell asleep. That's all right.
What a miss!
I see where he's coming from with this. I'm sure this is not where George Lucas would have taken it. I'm pretty confident it's not at all where George Lucas would have taken it.
I'm 2,000% confident.
Not a chance that this is where he would have gone. I can't imagine being in this position of, we're getting the band back together and, Harrison Ford says yes and Carrie Fisher says yes. So obviously if you're Mark Hamill, you're not going to be no thanks. So I feel like, it's like in a way you have to come back because that's obvious. They're building this whole trilogy. The second movie is called The Last Jedi, and it's got your face is going to be the big face. They write you in like you're the end of you're the key figure in the first movie, and you're at the very end, and then like your face is the poster of the second one, and so. It's like this thing of like, well, okay, I get to come back and do this character again, and it's back, re-energized and back to the ranks. But also, it's first of all, you have to imagine the guy's loyal to George Lucas to a point where it's like this guy created the role that gave me a legacy that was going to take me far beyond my lifespan, and like people are going to know who I am largely because of this character, and to also be, you hear George Lucas saying things like, I really feel cut out, I feel hurt, I feel like they didn't listen to me. Yeah, you're going to be loyal to the guy and wonder like, well, why aren't you listening to him? Because to Mark Hamill, this is the guy who turned him from an unknown actor to a massive global superstar.
Yeah, it's one of those things though that's like, once you create something that becomes a global phenomenon, it's weird in a way. You don't have the right to it anymore. You like J.K. Rowling. Harry Potter is so far beyond anything she could have originally imagined.
Well, she still kind of has the rights to
legally,
Harry
but
Potter,
I'm
whereas
saying,
George
like,
Lucas has no right to do anything Star Wars related anymore.
Sure,
No.
I'm talking more metaphorically,
yes,
and that's why you're here for your handsomeness and your hashtag legs. But I just mean metaphorically, like whether you legally have the rights to it or not, like you don't have the rights to the response to it. You don't have, you can't own that thing. It's so far beyond your control. Star Wars literally became a religion, right? There are a million offshoot novels and so forth. It's a universe that he can't own or control, and it's its own entity now, and that does have to be hard as the creator of that franchise and also the owner of that character in Mark Hamill. But yeah, that's just kind of is what it is. Yeah,
I wish it was the original where he was Luke's Star Killer, and
Yes.
According to the Journal of the Willis, he goes to find his twin sister, who is not Princess Leia. That was the original plan.
Well, what I'd love to see is because they did not too long ago a comic book adaptation of that original script, just the really batshit
Crazy.
Star Wars Diary of the Journal of the what you're talking about, Willis. That is a crazy comic book, and I would love now to be able to see sort of a what if comic book adaptation of George Lucas's trilogy of whatever it was supposed to be. I'd read that comic. That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like he was a little boxed in with the prequels, and that he had somewhere he had to get to. And I am curious. I'm part of it, and I've given him as much grief as anyone else about the prequels and stuff. But I am curious to know when he had a kind of a future course of limitless possibility, like where was he going to take Han and Luke and Leia? And I'm sure it's anywhere close to what they're doing.
Yeah, and that would be
Force
great.
Awakens or or Last Jedi or any of these movies.
Be like a cool alternate story if we could get our, But would you like to see, say, the continuation of like with Fantastic Beasts without J.K. Rowling writing it? Like, would it be interesting to see what someone else outside of that would interpret?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Sure.
But that's
strong
what
opinion. That's here on
Hamill's going
ScreenJunkies
through.
News.
It'd be like if someone came to Daniel Radcliffe in 20 years and said, "Hey, J.K. Rowling sold us the rights for Harry Potter, and we're going to make a new trilogy of Harry Potter movies. We're going to get Old Man, and Emma Watson and Rupert Grint have signed on, and we're going to bring Harry Potter back, and people want it, and it's like, okay, but then you're in the movies, and it's like, well,
Harry would
Yeah,
not.
not what Harry would have
This
done.
is not what J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling would have done. This, I mean, I could see how Daniel Radcliffe.
He's a close to suicide horror that went rogue.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
No,
well,
he
Harry
had a
doesn't
really
do
rough
magic anymore,
childhood.
and he's
he put away the
isolated himself on Azkaban, and it's like, oh,
What?
All of that actually could work, frankly. Like, Harry had a rough childhood.
yeah, no, it could work, but I could see Daniel Radcliffe having the same kind of conflict of just like, I love that I get to come back and do this role, but I am somewhat loyal to what I think she would have done and what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I can see how it's jarring where Mark Hamill ends Force Awakens with a big question mark where it's like, okay, in this one I just sort of do a fun little show up at the end and okay, let's see what, and then he gets the script for the next one and goes, what? Oh, okay, sure. What? Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have more to say when this side of the table actually gets to see the film.
When this side of the table sees the film, we will talk about the things in more detail.
Yep.
Yeah, no spoilers here, but I will be interested to see how the rest of the audience responds to what happens with Luke in this movie, which I like. You can see the review once again on Screen Junkies main.
We also don't say anything about what happens to Luke in that review. But
We say no spoilers, but we will talk about spoiler things this weekend, and certainly next week we'll get their thoughts on some stuff. And we will be here tomorrow. Other things to kick off to. Billy, what do I have to plug right now? Honest Trailer.
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Genius out of these brains.
Go.
Nothing but jokes. Nothing but genius. Go tell them on the Twitters how amazing they are.
all right.
Because I trap them here in the mornings to talk about the stuff, and then they got to go write all day like little writing monkeys. It's good to see you.
Thank
Be
you.
nice to each other.
Oh, wow, that's it. Writing monkeys. Goodbye.
Riding monkeys.
This episode was brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch to America's best unlimited network.